Well, check this out. You miserable bastards. I'm not doing a whole lot except testing this out. Right now, I don't actually intend to do any art tonight. I kind of played with it a little bit. See how I worded that? Yeah. But I'm really just testing the vertical orientation on Insta because I've been beating my head in about getting that live broadcast done in a good way that doesn't look like garbage. And I'm inching ever closer to it becoming a reality. The software I'm using is a lot more flexible than I realized, and so it is possible to broadcast in the full screen format, but also in the vertical format at the same time. So yeah, I will be able to give my full attention to all audiences involved. If that doesn't sound like some pleasurable shit, I don't know what else to tell you. But as long as I'm on, I might as well go forward with it. Ben Meiselas is friggin' jumping out of his skin and shit. Apparently Russia's into the fray in full now.
Breaking loose as Donald Trump's unlawful and disastrous war against Iran is now spreading its tentacles, reaching areas like the Baltic states. Watch what's going on in Estonia, in Latvia, in Lithuania, where Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump's bud, has his eyes set, in my view, and on others who are watching this region for a possible invasion. I mean, folks, the entire world is at war right now in some way or another. I mean, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia have been prepared for the possibility of a Putin and Russia invasion there as Putin gets more desperate as his losses continue to mount from his invasion in Ukraine. And we have to be looking around the world right now at these different potential locations where we could see a war break out as the vulnerabilities caused by America's weakness, may start to surface as well. Those Baltic states, though, are well prepared, but Putin may want to try to create some conflagration in that region. I mean, look what the Trump regime is doing in South Korea. They've removed their THAAD and Patriot systems that are protecting South Korea. President Lee of South Korea is like, we strongly object to the U.S. taking away the systems that were meant for us to protect against a possible invasion by China, but sadly we don't have a say with our objection. The Trump regime's just taking the weapon systems out of South Korea, and the Trump regime is not giving the weapons that were promised, that were budgeted for by our Congress, to Taiwan to protect itself from a potential invasion by China right there. Watch these hot spots right now. That's what we're focused on here at the Midas Touch Network. And when you have a reporter like Jennifer Griffin, who's the national security reporter over at Fox, she's like one of the only good reporters there, saying keep an eye on Russia. And she reposts Igor Sushko, who writes, smells like Putin is making domestic legal preparations for a ground invasion of the Baltic states. Let's be clear, Jennifer Griffin does not delve into hyperbole. So when she says keep an eye on Russia, and she reposts Igor Sushka saying, is Putin making domestic preparations to invade the Baltic states right now? Pay close attention. And here on the Midas Touch Network, we like to report on things in advance so you can start focusing on all of these things. So here is some of the latest there. So the Russian government's legislative committee approved amendments that expand Putin's powers to use troops outside of the country, the Moscow Times reported. According to the document, Putin will be able to extraterritorially use units of the armed forces to, quote, protect Russian citizens in the event of their arrest, detention, criminal, or other prosecution abroad. This is the language that Putin uses as pretext for invasion. Very similar to Trump, where they'll say, Putin will go, denazification. Donald Trump goes, we're trying to stop the narco-terrorists. Same types of playbook right there that they both use.
I hate that shit makes sense.
And so a lot's developing. Let me explain to you, though, why also Russia is very desperate, although Russia has just gotten a huge economic gift from the Trump regime. So while Russia is very publicly helping Iran, they're helping Tehran, they're helping Mojaba, the new Ayatollah of Iran, while Russia is helping Iran target American interests, helping Iran get more parts, to shoot at Americans. Russia has publicly stated, Putin has publicly stated, we're helping Mojaba. Our support of Iran is unwavering. That's what Putin has said that he's doing. Donald Trump is removing sanctions, or has removed the sanctions against Russia, so that India could buy the Russian oil, which was sold at like all-time high prices, removing other sanctions against Russia. So Russia's been allowed to dump its oil into the market, make huge amounts of money right now as well, I think, to beef up for a potential expansion of its war effort, as Ukraine is really doing a good counteroffensive against Russia right now. So here's what the Kyiv Independent's reporting. I mean, Zelensky is fighting back right now. Ukrainian forces have pushed Russian troops out of most of the occupied areas in the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast after several weeks of counterattacks along the section of the front where the Dnipropetrovsk and the Zaporizhzhia Oblasts meet. So there's been a kind of counteroffensive launched by Zelensky here that's been very, very successful, pushing these troops out of this oblast. As Gary Kasparov writes, Ukraine is winning despite Trump's attempts to help Russia. How humiliating it will be for Trump and the GOP to side not only with a KGB dictator Putin, but for a KGB dictator loser. So as Putin's losses mount, that's why I think his eyes now turn to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, which regained their independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. They're all members of the European Union. And I think Putin is trying to provoke, there already kind of is a...
So, I hope anybody watching that shit can read the subtext. Money and power is what these guys are going for. They don't want opposition. They don't want anybody opposing them. Shit. Putin's probably going to have a friggin' percentage stake in all the hotels being built in Gaza. And of course they're going to have a population of Gazans there. Of course they will. Who's going to clean the pools and do the laundry? And right now, here at home, they're going to try to shoehorn that fucking SAVE Act through. I just saw that Cronin in Texas, fucking Cornyn my shit, went ahead and stated he's down with getting rid of the filibuster. Even though he was a staunch supporter of that shit. Had an impassioned speech about defending it. Well, one of these days the shoe is going to inevitably be on the other foot, and we need to remember that. No, now he wants to get Trump's endorsement, so he's down with rescinding all that shit. So yeah, all of the shit that's going on worldwide, where these assholes are consolidating their power, putting deeper ladles into every available money source possible. You know, I have no idea how much of them fuel sales that Putin directly cash grabbed, because I know that ultimately a lot of those Russian armaments those are on credit. I mean, they've got to have a ridiculous deficit. You know, probably not as much as ours, but compared to the ability to keep up with it, pay it, all that good stuff. Yeah, that shit does matter. And yes, I am chewing gum. It's calming, it's soothing. It makes me remember that I don't have to have breath I'm ashamed of all the time. Yep, but it's late as hell. So I decided to mess around with this for a few minutes while my Salus jumps out of his skin once again. Not that it's not important. But this is all stuff that has been being warned of for some time. People didn't want to believe it. Even though they've seen for years and years rich people flexing their muscle on increasing their own political influence. Koch brothers didn't come out of nowhere. Their fingerprints are all over this shit that's happening right now. The rich guys, Trump's friends in the Epstein files, the friends of billionaires are only people that can make you richer, and they're people that are already rich. You know, there's the new rich, these tech guys. There's the old money, which that in a lot of cases, you know, royalty, Rothschilds, names like that. But these new tech billionaires, feels to me like they're kind of uninitiated. You know, they're barely getting the feel for the kind of power that money can give you. And when I say power, there's got to be a day where a billionaire wakes up and has this horrible ping of self-awareness. Even if they're doing a lot of, charity work, philanthropic. Yeah, it's too fucking late. Yeah, executing a lot of philanthropy. But once they realize that they have enough money to have like a murder covered up, they kind of wonder how much they can actually get away with. That has to be a part of it when you're that obscenely rich. And people will say, you know what, you're pretty jaded about that. And I will say yes. Yes, I am. Because we are watching in real time billionaires running away with it. Politicians who everybody thought was the lowest of the low are showing left and right that they don't have the guts to sit in there with billionaires and duke it out. Cornyn in Texas, he's a fucking old man. All he has to do is be afraid that he's not going to get elected. You are retirement age, bitch. Fucking retire. Retire. Get the fuck out of the way. You cannot be that desperate and greedy that you need that office. So much so that you compromise everybody else's shit. Not exactly flattering picture of Texas this motherfucker is painting. Bending to the knee to a fucking billionaire who shits his pants. Yes, he's a billionaire that shits his pants. I heard him shit his pants in Detroit. And you just, and FEMA! And you can hear it in the background. Mike caught it all. Just blew his fucking ring out. Shit, half the time he's having press conferences, they have to stop him early because he's sitting there fucking creaming the goddamn diaper down. And Stephen Miller is sitting outside the bathroom while they clean him up and he collects the diaper as a fucking memento. He looks like a little sleazy scuzzbag that would fucking do that. Master's droppings contain power. Ugh. And to think, he's gonna be a dad. That's all I want to delve into that. Considering I really don't think it was a stretch of the imagination to think that that little Smeagol fuck actually collects the shit friggin' diapers of Der Fuhrer. And you know, the funny thing is I always catch myself referring to this, and you know, people always make references to Germany in the 1930s about this shit that's going on. And it's not inaccurate. It's really not. It's the same friggin' playbook. But key difference, I think, Hitler got his fucking ideas from over here. And I got to get my facts 100% on this. But I do know that the truth is I believe it was Henry Ford forked out his own money to print a publication that was based on anti-Semitism, on the Jewish threat. And I'm gonna have to look it up later because I'm saying it out here, and if it's wrong, it's wrong. But I'm pretty sure I obsessed on this for a couple of straight months at one point. It's just a long time ago. If I remember right, there was communication between Adolf Hitler and the person that published this magazine. As a matter of fact, I want to do a quick web search and see if that is the truth, Ruth. And I'm putting the names in. Uh-oh. There is an article here. Hitler's American Friends. That is fucked up. Henry Ford and Nazism. So it actually was Henry Ford. I was right. Henry Ford and the Jews, the story Dearborn didn't want told. Michigan. Bro. You gotta air that out to exorcise the demon. Well, it looks like somebody was a journalist at a small paper in Michigan was writing an article about the connection in 2019, and he got fired. So there was a magazine that Henry Ford was printing, called The International Jew. Holy shit. Ooh. That is... The International Jew was distributed across Europe and North America during the rise of fascism in the 1920s and 30s, influenced some of the future rulers of Nazi Germany. In 1931, 2 years before he became the German Chancellor, Adolf Hitler gave an interview to a Detroit news reporter in his Munich office which featured a large portrait of Ford over the desk of the future Fuhrer. The reporter asked about the photo. I regard Henry Ford as my inspiration, Hitler told the news. Wow. That is some straight up shit. So, I just want to go on the record and throw it out there. That anti-Semitism sounds about as American as apple pie. That's some shit, yo. I have notifications on the IG, but it must be somebody liking some shit I did. Or some fucked up comment I made. Not much activity on my socials this late. As I said, I was just running a test, and I gotta say, the feed looks pretty damn good. I'm liking the changes I made. I don't like how much weight it looks like I have to lose, but that'll be a subject for another day. It's enough for me that I was able to get some awesome blending here done in a really short amount of time comparatively to the other evenings I've been on. And kind of show the connection between one of the American pioneers, the biggest American pioneer of the auto industry, and Nazi Germany. Oh, shit. That is ugly. That is super ugly. So, I'm going to have to refamiliarize myself with this shit. Because I think this whole thing where people want to sweep shit like this under the rug, like not teaching about slavery in history classes, the fact that things like Japanese internment and the repatriation program, these things that targeted brown people, it's trying to be swept under the rug in kind of a feeble attempt to say, well, there's no use to the talking down about America, whatever. I don't like that people are talking that America is this horrible place. Let's correct that, and let's make it really real to you, as real as you can possibly think, because all of this horse shit about make America great again, how do you define great? Because the periods that people seem to be hearkening back to, a booming middle class, a lot of even CK thought it was a horrible thing to get civil rights and all that stuff involved, because per capita, people who Charlie Kirk thinks he knew would probably have more money and more safety and all, have their own communities and all that good stuff. And I'm sure glossing it over, everybody would like to do that. It's nice and convenient. But, people don't understand how close that shit is. They don't understand that even back then, there were people alive at that time when all the civil rights movement was just fresh and new, and they were pushing and pushing and pushing, that there were still people breathing that had lived under slavery. Their parents, grandparents, they knew that it was still close by, that their relatives had been sexually assaulted and had to bear a child that couldn't be acknowledged in a community. And that nobody in their own community could do anything about it. So, let's not forget, tribal schools were still running. Lynchings were happening to everybody who looked a certain way. And it wasn't just in the South. Well, let's not kid ourselves. It was mostly in the South. But in Texas, you were going to lynch whoever, you felt didn't belong. And that was a whole lot of Spanish surnames, too. So, yeah. That stuff should be remembered. Because when you paint those times like they were great, who were they great for? Because I will go out on a limb and say, even the people who you're trying to convince that it was a great time for, lower class people, not everybody got a dip of that wealth. Nope. There were plenty of poor people to go around in every group. Plenty. There was plenty of alcoholics and drug abuse. Same as there is now. Just people hit it. And it's like people can't appreciate how much of a difference certain developments are going to play in perceptions. There are no more autistic kids than there ever were. There just aren't. Because at some certain time, they didn't even know what the fuck autism was. They didn't know what bipolar disorder was. They just thought somebody was hysterical. So they'd take them to the doctor and put their genitals in cages and whatever the fucked up shit. Put leeches on them, whatever. So, all the perspective needs to be there. People need to remember, even during COVID, people were trying to be like, well, it's not that lethal. Spanish flu was, way more lethal. It's like, yes, it was. Yes, it was. But one of those things that's giving us a real fighting chance is the fact that we have a lot more running water and a lot more fucking soap, you shit. Think that doesn't count for nothing? Doesn't mean that it's not lethal. We have certain safeguards in place. People bathe more than once a week now. And it is generally frowned upon to share the bathwater. Oh, what a world. All right. Rant over. Daddy got to get to bed. But if you stopped on and listened to me for a minute, I appreciate it. If you have any questions about what I did tonight, any of my views, I'd invite you to remember it may not have been too coherent, but I'll stand by it 100%. And I don't think it's such a bad thing to point out these connections when we have a government that's actually erasing history, shredding documents of evidence that contain evidence for people who are never going to see justice. Not as long as these guys are there, not as long as they're planning on disenfranchising the general populace's vote. Because ultimately, they're trying to tip the table so that one group who has everything in place all the time in their favor is going to be the largest voting bloc. That way, they can keep cheating and rigging elections. And that way, we never find out, the horrible things that have been done in the name of keeping money and corruption secret. And also, how many times a day somebody shit their pants in the Oval Office. It is now the Awful Office. Oval Orifice. Yeah, I'm fucking tired, bro. So, yeah, if you're watching right now, I appreciate it. If you have any questions on what I've been doing art-wise, hit me up in my messages. If you want to collab, let me know. I'm always game for that shit. And, yeah, I appreciate the love. And, well, I guess we're going to go ahead and call it a night now. So, thanks for stopping in. Stay safe.